cartoon shows an old man with a long white beard, leaning on a staff, passing by a brand new baby. You've probably seen that cartoon a number of times, representing the end of the old year and the beginning of the new. The old year is gone. A new year is beginning. On this morning, on the CBS Sunday morning, there were some reflections on last year. There was also going to be a section on looking to the year ahead and what might happen. As we come to January 1st of each year, the emphasis is mostly on the new. The first baby of the year, 2023, will receive media attention. The last baby, born in 2022, won't get much attention. You know, we like to think that we can put the problems, shortcomings, and mistakes of the old year behind us and start with a fresh, unspoiled new year. In this coming year, new experiences await us. In the book of Joshua, Israel is preparing to cross the Jordan River. They are told to follow the Ark of the Covenant as their guide into the Promised Land. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 4, in speaking of the Ark says, "Do not come near it, in order that you may know the way you shall go, for you have not passed this way before." That's an interesting statement. Here's Israel, they're getting ready to enter into a new land. You have not passed this way before. Well, like Israel, we have not passed this way before. This new year is uncharted ground. None of us really know what this year holds. Perhaps we are expecting and looking forward to some new experiences this year. During the year, some will look forward to marriages, to births, to graduations, to school, to a job, a new job. Perhaps some will have the new experience of giving their lives to Christ in faith and obedience. Some of those may be here today. There's some we know and have shared the gospel with. There's some we haven't even met yet. Now, of course, not all of our new experiences will be happy ones. After all, the future is uncertain. James chapter 4, verse 14, "Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring." We may have the year all planned out, but things could change. It could be the year of a new job or the year we lose our job. It could be the year of good health or the year of serious illness. We may live the entire year, or the year for us may end prematurely. Of course, we don't have to look with gloom or fear at the new year. God is in the future, just as he has been in the past. Psalm 90, verse 2, "Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God." God has always been. And so God is going to be with us in this year as he has been with us in the past. God went before Israel into the Promised Land. He will go with us through this new year. And so we need not dread what lies ahead. God will be with us in both happy times and times of sadness. God is there in victory and defeat. As the new year begins, there are several things we should do. As the year begins, we should put time in its proper perspective. Now, time really means nothing to God because he has all of it. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, "But do not overlook this one fact, beloved, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day." God doesn't seem to be a clock watcher like we are. He has always been here. He will always be here. Perhaps time is so important to us because we have so little of it. We look back on the last year or past several years and regret that they flashed by with so little accomplished. We may ask, where does the time go? We may think, as I get older, the days go by faster. We may feel frustrated because we have had so much scheduled for last year, and already the year slipped by and ended. We may wonder if 2023 will be the same. Well, we need to be less occupied with time, but use our time better. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 and 16. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. How do we use our time? We need to put time in its proper perspective and make the best use of time. As the year begins, we need to take stock. We need to stop and count our blessings. Psalm 65:11, you crown the year with your bounty. All of us have been so bountifully blessed. We should count our blessings as individuals. We should count our blessings as a congregation. It's also a good time to do inventory. It's the time of inventory at many businesses and companies. But we also need to take spiritual inventory. How much did we grow spiritually in 2022? How did we help the church be what it should be? What did we do to help bring the lost to Christ? As we look back at 2022, we have much for which to be thankful, but realize there is still room for improvement. As the year begins, let's lay aside those things that have hindered us during the past year. The writer of Hebrews says in chapter 12, verse 1, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. The picture here is of perhaps the great arena and the racetrack. The runners lay aside every weight. They may have had it in training, but when it comes to the race, they lay aside those weights. And the writer says, spiritually, as we are running the spiritual race, we are to put aside those things that would slow us down. And he mentions specifically sin, the sin which clings so closely. Yes, there are some things that we should lay aside. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1. So put away all malice and all deceit and hypocrisy and envy and all slander. There are just some things we don't need in our lives. We don't need sin. We need to put it away, keep it away from us. We need to lay aside all lukewarmness. Jesus, in his letters to the 7 churches, as recorded in Revelation, had this to say to the church in Laodicea, I know your works. You are neither cold nor hot. Would that you were either cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. Now here was a church that on the surface seemed to be doing pretty well. Jesus says, no, you're not. You're not really dedicated to me, but on the other hand, you don't want to quit altogether. And so you're lukewarm. But that was displeasing to Jesus. In our relationship with Jesus, it needs to be all or nothing. We need to be fully dedicated to him or not bother to serve him. Lukewarm, half-hearted service is not satisfying to Jesus. We must not take our relationship with God for granted. We need to lay aside all worldliness. 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever. We are so surrounded with worldliness, and worldliness means basically the sinful things of this life. As John says, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, the pride of life, sinful things. Those may be the norm for most people. It should not be the norm for Christians. And if we're going to live for Jesus, we need to put aside those kinds of things. It would also be good for us as we begin the year to lay aside our sorrows. Even in the most sheltered life, storms and disappointments will come, but they should be accepted and used as wings and not weights. Difficulties affect people differently. A piece of wax and a piece of clay can be placed equal distance from a flame. The wax will melt, but the clay will harden. And it is the same with people. We're all going to have some difficulties. Will they make us stronger, or will they take away from our faith? As we begin the year, we need to lay aside everything that absorbs our energies and retards our progress. Jesus in Matthew chapter 13 said, "Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it." Sometimes we get caught up in the trivial things of life. Our energies, our dedication is spread to many things that are not bad in themselves necessarily, but they take us away from the one important thing. In life, we must sell the little pearls and other possessions to obtain the most valuable pearl. We must give up anything and everything that would keep us from growing spiritually. As the year begins, let us resolve to grow spiritually. Good resolutions are necessary to moral and spiritual advancement. Really, making a resolution is not just a New Year's thing. Making a resolution is setting a goal. Now, resolutions, as we know, may be broken. And we've all broken New Year's resolutions. You know, when we break a plate, though, we don't stop eating. When resolutions are broken, we should not quit. Resolutions should be made and made often. We resolve to pray more. We break the resolution. We don't give up prayer. We resolve again. We should resolve every day if necessary. Here are some resolutions for Christians to make. We should resolve to make this a happy year. Happy New Year is not an empty phrase for Christians, because the Christian can know true happiness. We should resolve to improve ourselves. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 2, like newborn babes, long for the pure spiritual milk, that by it you may grow into salvation. When Bertel Thorwaldsen was asked, "Which is your greatest statue?" he replied, "The next one." That is the way of growth. It is said that Oliver Cromwell wrote in his Bible, "If I cease to become better, I shall cease to become good." We must continually stay after ourselves to become better. If we stop improving and growing, we will slip backwards. And this is spiritually true as well as in other ways. We need to resolve in this year to become more like Jesus. We should seek to mold ourselves into the shape of Jesus. Our thoughts, speech, and actions should be like his. And yes, we should resolve to read and study God's Word. How many times have we resolved to read the Bible through in one year? We read Genesis, Exodus, and the first chapter of Leviticus. We miss a day or two and then give up. We must make this resolution often. We need to resolve to pray every day. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 17, one of the children's favorite memory verses, pray without ceasing. Pray continually. We need to pray on a regular basis. We need to talk to our Father often. We need to determine to resist sin. James chapter 4, verse 7 and 8. Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Well, each one of us has our own weaknesses. We are tempted to do certain sins. Now, there may be a number of sins that just don't bother us, just don't tempt us at all, but there are those certain sins that will tempt us. And we must resist those temptations. We must make sin less and less a part of our lives. We should resolve to keep peace and unity in the church. Many churches are torn by strife. But what does Paul say? Romans chapter 14, verse 19. So then let us pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding. Division and dispute don't take much effort, but effort must be made to preserve unity and peace. And we need to resolve to go forward. We want to progress as a Christian, progress as a church. We must continually work toward that goal. In Philippians chapter 3, Paul writes, Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Paul is using some of that athletic imagery again, running the race. He says, I don't look back. I strain toward what is ahead. I am looking to the finish line. He presses on. We need to set proper goals. We need to reach forward for them. We must not be like the fellows on a bicycle built for two. The two fellows were going up a hill. They barely made it. The one in back said, I don't think we would have made it to the top of the hill if I haven't kept the brake on to keep us from rolling backward. As the new year begins, we should seek to overcome those things that have kept us from doing our best, and we should resolve to do those things that will help us grow as Christians. What will we do in this new year? There's an old poem entitled A New Leaf. It has taken on several forms. He came to my desk with a quivering lip. The lesson was done. Dear teacher, may I have a new leaf, he said. I have spoiled this one. I took the old leaf, stained and blotted, and gave him a new one, all unspotted. And to his troubled eyes I smiled, do better now, my child. I went to the throne with a quivering soul. The old year was done. Dear master, may I have a new year, I said. I have spoiled this one. He took the old year, stained and blotted, and gave me a new one, all unspotted. And into my troubled soul he smiled. Do better now, my child.